son is racing.
Welcome, race fans, to another episode of the Rubbin' Is Racing Daily Fantasy NASCAR Show. We have all your information for the Brickyard 400 from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Stages this week are going to be at laps 50, lap 100, and then they race the final 60 laps to the finish.
Interesting fact here at Indianapolis is that out of the last 15 races, Chevrolet has won 13 of those 15, with Toyota winning the other 2. Ford has not won here at Indianapolis since 1999 when Dale Jarrett took it home for them all the way back before the year 2000. Man, I definitely think that that's going to possibly change this weekend. But also, are we going to have racing on Sunday or Monday?
Yeah, the whole weekend's been washed out, kids. We haven't had practice 1, practice 2, or qualifying, so the field is set completely on point standings, which leads Kyle Busch starting on the pole, who is the most dominant individual here. We'll get to that in just a little bit. I think we first need to talk a little bit about DraftKings lowering the contest sizes because it's kickoff NFL weekend. And look, I love NFL weekend, and that's where my head and heart's at this weekend. But DraftKings, you got to offer us better contests, man. It's a weak offering for the first week of NFL.
It's like they found a really cool island named NFL, and they just abandoned the other island called NASCAR. Holy moly. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just unbelievable that they basically gave us, originally what was the 50K. They went from, 28,000 field all the way down to half of that, which is 13. And they've shrunken the number one spot from 50K to 20K. So they've shrunken all that down, and it's basically really the only tournament that's actually worth anything to play in tomorrow's race here at the Brickyard. So I'm just going to be ending up tackling that since, we have no more qualifiers for the big tournament, and all the rest of the tournaments are absolute dog poo, to be quite honest about it.
Yeah, the tournament offering is so bad. I'm literally thinking about using the money I have in play and just using it at football, where there's actually decent contests that I could better use my money after. And I hate having to say that as a person that does a NASCAR show and loves playing NASCAR, but man, when the NASCAR offerings are that sketch, like sometimes you have to make decisions, and that's one of them.
And it's just sad because it's one of those situations to where we've got people that obviously are in the community that are very loyal to the sport, very loyal to fantasy NASCAR, and it almost feels like we've been kind of abandoned by the source that gives us our way of playing and really puts us in a box and puts us in a corner and making us make a decision on really just playing this or, not really playing at all. And it sucks. I mean, you never know. I think last time I looked, it was at 5,000 something in entrance in the big boy there in NASCAR on DraftKings. But I don't know. There may be quite a bit of overlay tomorrow too. So I think too, with the question of the weather, NFL kicking off, it could be a lot of overlay, and maybe from DraftKings perspective, it might be a smart move, but at the same time, I want to blame DraftKings a little bit too for, maybe not as many players in there because they just didn't give us the offerings that we should have this week as far as tournaments to play in.
Yeah, I really don't think that this is people like spending their bankroll only at football. I think this is people saying no to a terrible slate offering of contests. And I know last year's contest was on a Saturday, and so people played it, and then we had opening Sunday, and it seemed to work better from a daily fantasy perspective that way. I know that got mixed up a little bit, but man, like these tournaments are just they're sad is the best way to put it. But something that isn't sad is unlike the weather, which is most likely going to wash things out tomorrow. I need to give major props to Jamie Liehr on his finish in the qualifier last week. The guy finished third place, 0.5 points, making yet another finish that the two of us have had where we didn't get a live final seat. But here's the awesome part, right? Liehr didn't qualify in, but won $5,000 last week on his awesome lineup. Because he won $5,000, he actually won more money than 18 of the people that are going to get eliminated from their live final contest this weekend. So, buddy, you came out on top, especially since we have no information to go on for this race. You would have literally been stone cold in the dark guessing on lineups this week. Congratulations to you on the 5K. Are you a little happy that you didn't qualify and pocketed that 5K, or are you still bitter about it?
Well, I know we talked after the race last Sunday when it happened, and it was kind of a catch-22 for me, man. I was, glued to my DraftKings app on my phone and watching it on the TV, and just like, because it literally was, I was in second for a long time, and then even in the $15, I was there too some of the time, and it was crazy. And when I started getting up there and I knew that I was there, it was one of those where it was flip-flopping second to third to fourth, fourth to third. And, it just sucked because I was so pissed off because I wanted that seat, obviously. And it's something you and I have obviously worked so hard for over these handful of years. And to become so close and just be a half a point away from taking it down. But I will be honest, the 5K day is all right in my book. I will take that all day and every Sunday. If that's the way it goes, sure, I'll take that every time. I don't ever have to win anything as far as tournaments go if I get paid that every time. But no, man, it was fantastic. I loved it. And honestly, we'll talk about it later when we talk about the league. But if I would have just played my league lineup, I would have gotten a seat. So, but again, things happen for a reason. I truly believe that, not only in life, but in fantasy. And, you pick things for a reason, and you go with your gut and go with your instinct. And it worked out all right for me, because literally we're going to be talking about this, and I feel real sorry for those 30 people that are playing in that live final and having to make decisions on drivers and not having any on the track data. The very first time these guys are going to be on the track is for the race, and it's a huge question mark, and I'm glad I don't have to face that.
Congratulations once again, man. Just to give you guys, like, if you want the weather details, it's better than a 50% chance to rain all afternoon and all morning until roughly about the time where they would run out of time to get the track dry because there's no lights in Indy. So odds are we're going racing Monday. However, the last 2 times I've said that, somehow they got the race in and the weather, like the skies parted and the track stayed dry. But I don't see it happening because the same storm cell just hit us for the past 3 days, and it is soggy in Missouri, so I'm assuming it's going to stay soggy in Indianapolis. So I would assume Monday racing.
And if that does happen, I mean, to those that are, excited for the NFL kickoff tomorrow, and you are a NASCAR fan, as such as myself, and I know you are too, I will have to work on Monday, but that'll be nice for me to be able to concentrate just on football tomorrow and then have, the NASCAR on Monday. But at the same time, I don't know what DraftKings is going to do, because if it depends on, I guess, when NASCAR announces whether they're going to have the race or not, because don't forget there is Xfinity race on Monday at 10 a.m. So then you've got that quandary you've got to work around too. So, a lot of question marks this weekend for the NASCAR series and racing there at Indianapolis. So, maybe more of the action is going to be at Cincinnati, Indianapolis Colts game tomorrow than at Indianapolis Speedway.
Right. There's a lot of action happening in Indianapolis this weekend. Now, normally this is the segment of the show where we would start talking about the big 3. We're going to go ahead and talk about the big 3, but we're going to go in order of drivers, just in the way they qualified. And the big 3 start off 1, 2, 3, except for the fact that Truex failed qualifying inspection 3 times, is going to be without his chief engineer, and is also starting from the back of the pack, even though he will be scored from 3rd position on DraftKings. So be careful of that. Then you have Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch, arguably the 2 best, most dominant cars this season. But Kyle Busch is the one that has the track history here. The last 2 races here, he's completely dominated. And remember, he was dominating the last race here until he and Martin Truex Jr., literally the number 1 and number 2 car, got into it after he led 80-some laps, and that was the end of their day. So, I mean, Rowdy's starting on the pole. Liehr, what's your thoughts on Rowdy and the big three before we get on down the line?
Honestly, man, I mean, this is the house that Rowdy built. You know, he is the besides Jimmy Johnson having 4 wins, he is the second highest in wins here with 2, and he has been the most dominant guy here as of late. So, I mean, you got to give him the nod. Obviously, tomorrow or Monday, whenever we race, is being one of the dominators. And you know, as we talk about, depending on race, you know, how many laps we're talking about, how many dominators that we need in regards to our fantasy teams, and you know, to me. There's only, you know, obviously 160 laps here. So this is going to be more about the place differential, guys. This is going to be more about aerodynamics. This is going to be about the teams that have the money to put into the aerodynamics packages. And really, you know, when you talk about that, you're talking about the big teams. You're talking about JGR, Hendrick, you know, teams of that sort. So, yeah, I would definitely give the nod to Kyle Busch. And I'm sorry, I can't obviously leave the best team this year out, which was Stewart-Haas Racing in the Fords there. So, you know, it's really going to be probably a head-to-head battle for between Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch tomorrow or Monday. And I got to give the nod to Kyle Busch. And, you know, if you want to get swervy and go Kevin Harvick, I think you could do that. But, you know, you are talking about a guy that's coming off a Darlington race where they didn't perform very well at all. He wasn't even really a factor. And I know we talked about that last weekend too. And, you know, we come to a track that he obviously performs a lot better at. So if I had to choose one of the 3, I'm definitely going with Kyle Busch, a little bit of exposure on Kevin Harvick. And I can't do the Martin Truex Jr. play because he's starting from the back of the field and not even going to be scoring any points until he reaches that 3rd spot. And with the news of that team, and really I'm obviously heartbroken. My favorite driver.
Oh, dude, I'm devastated. I'm devastated. Yes. Like, this is terrible for NASCAR.
It is. And I'm heartbroken that they are going to have to disseminate at the end of the 2018 season. And I think I don't know if it's official yet, but what I've gathered and what I've heard is that, you know, JGR is going to absorb Martin Truex Jr. in the 19, which then will put Suarez out, going to another car that we don't know of yet either. There's been talks about Levine Family Racing dropping Chevrolet, going over to Toyota, and then Toyota basically having that alliance with JGR and them being the alliance with JGR. So then Suarez will go and drive the 95. But in my opinion, that's a step down for Suarez. But at the same time, I mean, if you got a free agent out there like Martin Truex available, I'm sorry. I don't care if you're an up-and-comer or not. This is a champion that's on the market, kind of like Kurt Busch. You got to go out there. You got to get him. He's just too talented not to have on your team. And, you know, for them starting at the rear of the field and not getting any points really until he gets up to the 3rd spot, which I don't even know if he will, because that team's just been struggling lately. And I don't know if that has anything to do with, as he obviously knew something was going to happen. We just did not know it publicly yet. So I don't know if that's been playing on his mind and that's been kind of playing out in his performances, but they have not done well over the last handful of weeks. So I probably won't have any exposure on Truex when it comes to tomorrow Monday's race at all.
No, I agree. The only thing that I would add is that the problem with the usual dominator place differential is because everybody is starting based on points. Most of these guys are pretty much where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Which is really crazy. There's you're going to get a couple of guys scoring place differential points, but I think mostly it's going to come down to finishing, which is going to be a guess basically on who doesn't wreck this week. And you know how I don't like that in NASCAR. And it just bothers me.
Yeah, definitely. And the crazy part is, dude, remember last year, and I know we already talked about it a little bit, but, you know, when Truex and Kyle Busch took each other out, I mean, that slashed so many lineups last year. It wasn't even funny. And then, you know, how many times did they wreck? I think there was, 10 cars that ended up finishing the race last year, and that was like with Michael McDowell getting like a 9th place finish or something crazy. And then Casey Kane obviously won the race, but they had some crazy wrecks here last year, and that was with obviously the packages that they were running. So I don't know, and that's the big question mark. I don't know what's going to happen because they've had zero exposure, and they race this track one time a year. So the only other time they raced it was last year. A lot of stuff has changed in the meantime, so it is just a big, massive question mark.
Well, and we need to point out the massive temperature change that is going to take place from the traditional races here. Traditionally, this race has been run in the summer, in the middle of the summer heat, like where the heat bears down on the track. With the rain and the cloud cover, even if the rain misses, it'll still be way overcast and very cool. That'll completely change the dynamics of this track. I kind of think that keeps me that I want to stay off of Rowdy Busch because of the track change. But at the same time, he's literally the only guy we have that is dominant, and he's starting on the pole. But what do you think the ownership, because all the information we have is just historical, with him starting on the pole, is he going to be 70+% owned? And doesn't it make sense then to fade on just the luck box scenario that apparently is the way to play this week?
No. In my opinion, I think that's, I mean, we're going to have contrarian plays, so you can throw your 30 to 35, 40% out there. So realistically, I think if we're talking about the $9 tournament tomorrow, I'm going to say that in that tournament, he's probably going to be 50 to 60% owned, and that's right. But based on a 13, almost 14,000 person field, I guarantee you there's going to at least be 30% to 40% of those lineups with designed fades or people just fading in general of Kyle Busch. And I'm sorry, but you got to go with, if you have no current data as far as how these cars are doing, and we've obviously got zero, you got to go with the historical data here, and that would lean towards Kyle Busch. And I mean, am I going to have some contrarian fades of Kyle Busch? But I will be playing a lot of Kyle Busch just because that's the way your lineups should probably look, just based off of what the information that we do have at hand here.
All right, we were going to try to make this a short and sweet to the point show, but I think we're kind of being long-winded, so let's go ahead. All right, starting fourth, we've got Kurt Busch, then Joey Logano, Keselowski. I think these guys are all starting a little too high for what I want them for. Normally, if they were starting back in the 10s or teens, I would be happy to play them. There's no potential here unless you have one of them dominating the race, right? That's just my read on the situation. Where I start to like guys, and I think Liehr's kind of in agreement, is at Kyle Larson at 7, Bowyer at 8, Blaney at 9, and I'm sorry, dude, Denny Hamlin has permanently burned me, and I am not playing that guy for the rest of the season. I'm done playing Denny Hamlin. I'm done talking about the guy. Like, no more Denny Hamlin.
Oh, I'm sorry you didn't listen to me last week, brother, and didn't play any Kyle Larson.
I deserve that. All right, go ahead.
I'm probably out on that. You take Martin Truex Jr. out of there. He's starting third. Too high, in my opinion, for Kurt Busch. Another guy that's on the move, but has been performing fairly well, but I can't do it. Same thing with Joey Logano. Awesome finish for those guys last week at Darlington. Did not see that. I said I obviously wouldn't have any exposure on Joey Logano. He paid off last week, so congratulations to the number 22 team. And then Brad Keselowski, nice work by that team, especially after a huge dominant performance by Kyle Larson. If you would have just played Brad Keselowski instead of playing Denny Hamlin, like maybe that's what I should have done, that would have been a 40-point difference there, which would have been huge. But I think Brad Keselowski, coming off the win last week, gains a ton of momentum going into this week at the Brickyard. So I do like me some Brad Keselowski this week. I think he's somebody that may get overlooked and underowned, even though that he won last year, or not last year, but last week here at Darlington. But the only thing is with Keselowski, he's only got one top 5 out of 8 races here with 4 top 10. So not a guy that shows a lot of dominance, but with that win last week, and we know how this sport is based off of momentum, that gave a real big boost in the back wheels to that number 2 Miller Lite team. So I would definitely be looking at some Keselowski action for this weekend. But as far as the rest of the top 10, not really. looking that much at Clint Boyer, kind of skipping over him this week. Unfortunately, he had another Darlington issue in driving directly into Ryan Newman last week. So that
wasn't his fault.
I know. Obviously you got to look out the window when the guy's doing this and he's going to pit. Like, you got to know what the hell's going on. That was part of his spotter's issue. But, Clint Boyer, definitely somebody that you may want to look at. But I'm not really looking that much into Boyer this weekend. He's not, historically that good here. He's more, in my mind, the short track kind of guy, not the 2.5 mile flat, corner track kind of driver. And plus, his cost this weekend is just a little too high in my blood. I mean, I can't spend $9,000 on somebody from the 8th place position when we're at a track where place differential is a premium, and that's just too much money to spend.
Right, but who are these guys that are going to get you your place differential? That's the problem I have.
We'll get there. Yeah. But one guy, the guy I do like Ryan Blaney a lot. I know that he's a little bit of a high-costing driver this week at $9,500, but starting from that 9th position is definitely somebody that you've got to look out for, because I know it's not the tricky triangle, and it's not three separate turns. It's 4, and it's a bigger track, but it's kind of equates to be about the same on the turns. And he's got great track history at Pocono, where here at Indianapolis, we only race here once a year, so not a ton of exposure for Blaney here. But it is a guy that definitely loves this type of track, and somebody that's coming off of a disappointing finish last week at Darlington. That team, has kind of gone by the wayside just a little bit, and I think they've got a little bit of a fire underneath them to come out and perform well. But he's only raced here 3 times, and unfortunately he doesn't even have a top 10 here. So it's somebody that I definitely think can be more of a contrarian play for a $9 tournament. So I do like some Ryan Blaney this weekend.
Man, bro, for us trying to have a streamlined show and having no information, you are chocked full of information and just able to rant on every driver this week. It's fairly impressive for us having no data. I have to admit, I just, woo, all right, brother. 11th is Chase Elliott. I'm interested there. I'm also interested in Amarola a little bit. Eric Jones in 13th. Jimmy Johnson is where it starts really getting intriguing to me at 14th. I like him. I like Bowman at 15th. I'm not a big fan of Ryan Newman in 17th, but Liehr may disagree with me. I'm also not a huge fan of Austin Dillon, even though we've seen that car turn around starting 18th. I think it's just about 6-7 positions too high for where I want to play Austin Dillon. Paul Menard starting 19th, and then I really was on this play. Daniel Suarez starting 20th. Now he's in the back of the field. I don't think that it takes him long to get from the back of the field to 20th, so I'm still liking that as a play. Liehr, your thought on this next group of 10 drivers?
Yeah, I love Chase Elliott this weekend. Chevrolet in general has been coming on as of late. Obviously, we saw a dominant performance, with Chase Elliott a few weeks back at Sonoma. He had a great finish at Bristol, finishing 2nd, and then last weekend at Darlington, he finished fairly well too. But that Chevrolet team overall, Hendricks and the guys over at Chip Ganassi, they've been turning it on. When I say Chip Ganassi, I mean just Kyle Larson. But Jamie McMurray did have a great, fantasy weekend last weekend, starting from that 31st position, getting in the top 10. I think he got 9th, something like that. But I love Chase Elliott. I'm going to be playing a lot of Chase Elliott. Then I kind of skipped down a little bit, man. Not really too on to Eric Amarola. That team has been disappointing as of late. Really haven't shown much. It's mostly been Kevin Harvick in the Stewart-Haas garage as of late. So, but number 13, starting from the 13th position, number 20, Eric Jones. Love the Eric Jones play this week. Little bit expensive for you, but that's just the way it's going to roll with Eric Jones. But if you've got him at an $8,400 price point and you got room to put it on there, I know it doesn't come with a huge, a lot of place differential, but this guy's they've been rolling real good, man. And I love the Kyle Busch, like Eric Jones, JGR stack there. Overall, a JGR stack would be a great play this week as well. Even with Daniel Suarez starting from the back of the field, Even though he's starting 20th, I mean, he's still got plenty of time to get up there, get past that 20th position, and still get a top 10 finish. But Eric Jones, in my mind, that guy is definitely a top 5 car this week. They've got a lot of great momentum this weekend, and I look forward Eric Jones to have a great finish. Then we come to the 7-time champ, Jimmy Johnson, last week. Obviously, with that, what did he start, 22nd last weekend at Darlington, and they blew the motor and burned a lot of people. And I think that's going to go against him this week in fantasy. 14th position, a little high for me, for Jimmy Johnson. I know that he's obviously been disappointed how his 2018 season has been going. But the crazy part, man, is he's still in the hunt for a championship, even though there's no way that that's going to happen. But also, too, we've talked about it as well, you know, what's going to happen with him in 2019. So I think a little bit of that's on the Jimmy Johnson mind because he does not have lows for next year. So what's going to happen with that? Bowman, no thank you. Not really looking at any John Deere green starting from the 16th position.
No, but that ride is sweet. It is a sweet ride.
It is a sweet ride.
And thank you, John Deere, for sponsoring a car. That's pretty sick.
Yeah, exactly, for stepping up and doing that. Ryan Newman, interesting play. I do like a little bit of Ryan Newman, although his price went way up from last week. I'm sorry, it didn't go way up, but it's up $200 from last week. He was $7,000, I think, or was he $6,800? Or I can't remember.
He was 66, so it's up. It's up.
Yeah, so it is up $600. So you know, it's hard to keep all this stuff straight, but you know, he's up quite a bit. But you know, a guy that definitely has got a ton of experience in. He is a guy that is a former winner here. So don't keep that out of the back of your mind. And a guy like that starting from a 17th position, he's got an average finish here just under 17th. So he's got 3 top races and 4 top 10s. So a guy at that price tag that could get you some place differential in the top 10, you know, have that kind of guy in your back pocket. Austin Dillon, not really feeling it. Paul Menard's an interesting play. I like the Paul Menard play, the Wood Brothers. And then, you know, we've already talked about it, but Daniel Suarez starting from the 20th position, but obviously starting from the rear, but a guy that's probably going to be really, really high owned.
The next group of guys is Jamie Mack starting 21st. I mean, he paid off last week. It was a nice finish. I'm not sure he does it again. He's been inconsistent. It's crazy this season. I think that we can count on more of that from Jamie Mack. Billy Byron has a little bit of interest there. But like you said with Jimmy Johnson, 2 of the Chevys last week had major engine malfunctions. Now, did they get that righted, or is that going to carry over and they're going to continue to have problems at Indy? That worries me a little bit. Then we've got Buescher starting 23rd, Allmendinger starting 24th, David Reagan starting 25th, Michael McDowell starting 26th, Regan Smith starting 27th, and if we had to go into the garage segment, I was totally sending DraftKings to the garage because guess who's not on the playlist? We can't play Regan Smith. And I'm sorry, they were updating NFL players this week on the lineups. If they can do it for the NFL, they can do it for NASCAR. And it is personally insulting that they choose not to add drivers when there's a driver substitution. We knew about this since Monday that this driver swap has happened. And DraftKings has fallen flat on their face and let us down by not swapping this in there. And when we choose between 40 drivers, eliminating drivers is unforgivable. Like, that is just absurd and ridiculous. So even though we're doing the show a little bit out of order, I'm sorry, DraftKings needs to go to the garage, not only for the tournament offerings, but for not including all the drivers on the slate. We've already done this once this year where I called them out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, for the Cole Custer play.
Yeah. Let me round out those guys with Matt Kenseth at 29th and Ty Dillon starting 30th. Any of those interest you? I'm guessing you're going to let me guess. I'm guessing you're gonna track history out and try to make some sort of argument that Matt Kenseth in his ride in that Roush Fenway ride that has been terrible throughout the season is somehow going to return him to his glory at this track, which he has a good track history here.
Well, thank you, Wyndham Rewards, for sponsoring one of the best drivers this weekend.
Oh, good Lord.
There at Indianapolis. Dude, I mean, yeah, it's going to be a massively owned play. I mean, you got to be an idiot not to think that the Matt Kenseth play, starting from a 29th position, is not a good or smart play, especially when the guy, his cost is only $7,000 this week, and a guy starting from the 29th position. He has the chance or the ability. Obviously, he's got the ability as a driver. He just needs the car equipment to get up to his standards. But that guy could get a top 20, man. And I wouldn't be surprised to get a top 15. If there is carnage this weekend, that guy could easily get 15-plus place differential points. So I think at the end of the day that Matt Kenseth is going to be your larger place differential driver in the field this weekend. And it's hard for me to say that, especially, in the Roush Fenway equipment. You've got to have your head there. I'm sorry. It is a play. Going back up to the top, Jamie McMurray, definitely a play this weekend. He got a top 10 finish last week. As far as his future, it's in question. And this is a guy that also, just like Ryan Newman's got to win here at Indianapolis. 15 starts, he's got 3 top 5s and 5 top 10s. So, 33% of the time he's finishing in the top 10. So a guy that's starting from the 21st position with the possibility of 10-plus place differential points, yeah, I'm going to be about that play. So I'm definitely, think that Jamie McMurray is a play this weekend. The problem with Jamie Mack is his cost this weekend, which is a little bit high, which sailed all the way up to $7,900. So it's going to be hard getting him in your lineups when you're going, Rowdy Bush at 11,700 or Kevin Harvick at 12,200, and you're trying to throw some of these other guys in there that are 9,000 plus or just a little over 8,000 plus in your lineups. It's going to be hard to fit those middle tier guys into your lineups this weekend. So, but sometimes you got to start your lineups with the guys that you think that are going to get you the points, and that's kind of where I found myself going, is sticking in the guys that I think that are going to score the points first, then trying to find my dominators and get them in there and then work around that. So, definitely got to have some Jamie Mack this weekend. William Byron, Billy Byron. I like the Billy Byron play this week, especially because of his cost. His cost this week is $6,800, and Billy Byron in the Xfinity race won it last year. So we're talking about obviously 2 different circuits when it comes to the aero packages and the cars and the drivers, but a guy that's in top-notch equipment, a guy that is getting experience week in, week out, was doing fairly well last week at Darlington before he blew the motor. So starting from a 22nd position with a $6,800 price point, I like that play, brother. I think that play is going to be a good play this weekend. So I'm definitely going to have some exposure on Billy Byron. Chris Buescher, AJ Allmendinger, JTG Doherty Racing, they've surprised us here and there, but I'm not going out of my way to make any JTG plays this week. There are things out there for you to pick up instead of the number 47 or 37 this weekend for your fantasy teams. But one guy that I do like, and he has been performing very, very well, and I did have some exposure on him last week, and surprisingly enough, he did perform very well, and that's David Ragan. David Ragan, I wish this guy, back when he was with Roush Fenway Racing, he was in really good equipment back in the number 6 UPS. I'm sure you remember that vehicle. I wish he would get back into good equipment again, because this guy has been performing that front row motorsports equipment all year long. He finished last week in 17th, and that's after starting 15th, so he only lost 2 place differential points, but still scored 25 points at a $5,500 price point. He is the same this week at $5,500, but he's starting from the 25th position. I mean, the guy's 17th, 27th finish, 26th, 19th, 29th, 18th, 15th. I mean, he's definitely been outperforming his equipment all year long. Starting from the 25th position, I like me some David Ragan this weekend for some salary relief. I think that's a great play for you in your lineups, and I'm definitely going to have some exposure on him. For the rest of them, no real love for Michael McDowell and Regan Smith. No, thank you. Well, I can't because he's not on the list. Bubba Wallace, you may want to for contrarian play, but obviously a guy that's coming to a track that he hasn't raced on the circuit before with the big boys, struggling and just kind of getting his feet under him. So, but yeah, and then Ty Dillon. You definitely got to have some Ty Dillon exposure this weekend. his salary absolutely skyrocketed this week and was definitely the biggest mover when it came to salaries. He went almost over $1,000 more than what he was. So, but he had the finish. He finished 21st when he started 32nd last week. So definitely a guy that you had to have, and I'm definitely going to have some exposure on Ty Dillon this weekend.
Now we have the last group of drivers, which other than the first two are all guessworks of people that you would want to play if you're banking on carnage and that these cars can sit on the track. The first driver is Matt DiBenedetto starting 31st, who decided to get rid of his ride. He doesn't have a new deal or new offer. He just kind of grabbed it and went after it and was hoping for the best. Whether that means he'll have an Xfinity ride next season or whether he'll have a major cup ride, we'll see. I have no idea. I wish him the best. I really would love to see him in top-notch equipment, but one of those top-notch equipment seats is getting occupied by Truex, and that leaves one seat that's still open, and it's at Stewart-Haas. So I don't know. I don't think it's going to be DiBenedetto that gets that seat, although I wish it was him that gets that seat.
Also, too, I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Matt Kenseth, but we do know that Trevor Bayne is not going to be back with the number 6 next year. So there is going to be an opening, I think, at Roush Fenway, and that's kind of an intriguing move there. There's also been rumors that, he may end up with Front Row Motorsports as well. So I don't know.
I'll tell you this much, dude. I would rather be with Levine Family Racing if they do a tech swap with JGR than I would be in a Roush Fenway car. I'm just saying, like, if I was a driver,
it depends on the dominoes falling of, well, then where does Suarez land?
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then also, too, I think another intriguing one that I have not heard anything about, that it could be a possibility, but they are also talking about him going to Xfinity. I would think a great fit, too, I know it's a step back for him to go back into a lower, graded series, and that would be Xfinity. But I would love to see him in where Elliott Sadler is right now full-time. I would love to see him in the number 1 full-time on the Xfinity series. I think he'd be a great driver for that series and have some great finishes for that number 1 vehicle. So for Dale Earnhardt Jr. So I think that would be an awesome move too.
See, I was kind of hoping the next guy got that ride, and Ross Chastain, after what we saw what he did last week in good equipment. I think Ross Chastain's the only other guy in this list that you would want to play for legit place differential, because that car has been finishing like in the mid-lower 20s when he runs well, and that gives you 7+ place differential at low salary. The rest of these guys, and that's before any wrecks, the rest of these guys, let's be honest, are lucky to complete the laps on the track. And with saying that, you're banking on carnage happening while they're staying on the track in order to get any place differential out of these guys. Because, let's be honest, Landon Castle, Corey LaJoie, Landon Castle, J.J. Yeley, David Starr, Earnhardt, and Reed Sorenson, Timmy Hill, and Todd are all going to just play in the back of the field, right? That's just where they're going to be. And that's the reality of NASCAR, unfortunately.
Yeah. I definitely, last week, you said that a guy that you thought would be really high owned, and I think he really was Ross Chastain. And basically, from that incident he had with Harvick, at the Xfinity race on Saturday, that definitely, I think, bumped up his ownership percentage. But the guy performed, man. He finished 26th from the 35th starting place spot and scored 27 fantasy points last week. So was a great, $5,400 price tag was a great find, and he actually went down $100 this week to $5,300. So if you need some of those salary relief guys, Ross Chastain is definitely a great place for you to look at. And as far as any of those other drivers, I had Landon Castle. I thought he was going to do a little bit better than what he did last week. So I had some exposure on him just for salary purposes, but pretty much avoided everybody else and had a little bit of me off Jeffrey Earnhardt because he was the one that was on the team above me, and he started wrecking all over the place, but yet still couldn't go laps and laps down. Or couldn't just get off the damn track and get into the garage. He had to keep going even though he was screwing up everybody else. So that was the difference maker there. So Jeffrey Earnhardt.
But because of that, you won more money than over half of the people that are going to compete this weekend with
I
no
know,
information.
man, but you know me.
I know.
I'm the gambler. I like the opportunity. I like the chance to.
I'm just as much of a gambler as you are, brother.
I'm just a
smart gambler. Like I can read the numbers.
I agree with you. Like I would love to be. You know, I should take homage knowing that I got the more guaranteed money. But for me personally, inside, it's like, well, I wanted to take my chance. I want to take my opportunity to go against, the guys in for the live final, going up against, and it's not necessarily the best all the time because there is luck that is involved. But putting my skills to work in a smaller field for a large prize, and
No, and I think, and I would agree with you if it wouldn't have been at a track, if they wouldn't have set it up at a track where we only go to it once a year, and now we have no practice or qualifying data, so everything's arbitrary.
Yeah,
you would have been blind.
Definitely.
So theoretically, the best players in the world would have been blind guessing. So you can't can tell if you're one of the best when that happens.
Exactly.
It's all ridiculous.
And I know we've talked about it in previous shows when we were talking about Indianapolis in general, but also the final being at the
Roy
Oval in Charlotte. That we have obviously but it's like this weekend, but with no track history either. Except you will have practice. Hopefully that weekend it's not all rained out, but you will have practice and qualifying and all that. So at least you'll have more of an idea. And
at the risk of making this show any longer, but when they tested there, half the people that tested completely thrashed their car. So
yeah. So it's going to be a luck box again. So yeah.
Hey guys, I want to wish everybody the best of luck this weekend. Those of you that are playing NASCAR still, those of you that are playing football, get on it. Good luck this week. Liehr, we're going to let you tell the results from last week's contest from the league, and we'll say our goodbyes and get out of here.
Before we get there, I didn't do a burn and rubber, but as you can see, I'm not in my normal facility here this week. I actually came up to Iowa this weekend to visit my mother, and burn and rubber, rain Indianapolis style, baby.
See, I would have went with Brickyard rain, but we know I can't do that, so I'm going to not even critique it.
I didn't want to get too loud because we're already past the midnight hour here, and all of these old folks in this home, they're already way asleep, and I definitely don't want to get kicked out of here just because I'm yelling at the top of my lungs. So, but as far as the league is concerned, yes, I finally did it this year. It only took 25 races for me to take down the tournament this week, last weekend at Darlington. But I won last weekend with the lineup of Chris Buescher. He got 19th to 13th place for a 37.5. Landon Castle with a 35 place start to the 30th position with a 19. Ty Dillon was a great play, finished 21st with a 31.5. And even though I was debating on it, I did go the Denny Hamlin route with the Kyle Larson, so the 1-2 combo. But Denny Hamlin obviously disappointed where he only led 11 laps out of all of those 367. But did finish in the top 10 with a 10th place finish for 32.25. And then Kevin Harvick was an obvious no-brainer play last week with the 22nd starting position. Number 4 finished 4th with 65 points. And the number 1 guy you had to have, must owned, and a guy that I was all about, obviously, and was only 9% owned in our league and was literally, I think in the tournaments I was in, he was 20 to 15% owned, which I didn't quite understand that because, in the video, if you go back and look, I thought that he was going to really, really high owned, but everybody was all on Denny Hamlin. But Kyle Larson, with a massive 284 laps out of 367 led.
Liehr's because his lap time sucked in practice. They were way middle of the board, nowhere near where he qualified. That's why everybody's off him.
When I'm feeling it, brother, you got to roll with it.
I mean, dude, the Liehr gut plays are sometimes the right play. Now, oftentimes they're wrong, but sometimes they're right.
Eric Jones. Well, all right, guys. Appreciate you guys watching the show, and glad you can join us. And looking forward to the league this week and putting some lineups in the question marks. And hopefully we get the race in tomorrow and make it a great Sunday. Looking for some green screens. And, man, I'm excited for some Chiefs football tomorrow. And hopefully we get the win out there in Los Angeles. Definitely going to say that probably the winner tomorrow at the Indianapolis 500, the Brickyard 400 at Indianapolis. I don't think it's going to be somebody that we all expect. I think it's going to be somebody new. So we'll see what happens.
It very well could be. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and comment. And, well, I know it's going to be crazy with football. Have a good one, guys. Win some money this week. Good luck.